everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you, and this will be the latest in our movie face-off editions where we'll look at two similar films in terms of genre, release date, franchise, and have a debate and comparison as to which one is the superior movie. So in this edition, and following the upcoming release of Furiosa and Mad Max Saga, we'll take a look at the Mad Max franchise and certainly the two most celebrated installments, which is of course Mad Max 2 or the Road Warrior as it was known, and also Mad Max Fury Road. Now released back on the 24th December 1981, The Road Warrior was the sequel to the original cult box office hit, with celebrated superstar Mel Gibson in the lead role, centering on a post-apocalyptic future where the world is a barren wasteland, full of biker gangs violently attacking the innocents in a hunt for gasoline. Max has to protect a group of civilians who are constantly under attack from the vicious group of the Marauders led by Lord Humongous, who want to obtain the supplies of gasoline from their oil refinery. Now coming up many years later on the 15th of May 2015, Mad Max Fury Road was the fourth installment in the franchise, with British actor Tom Hardy in the lead role, starring alongside Charlize Theron. This time we would see Max team up with the female warrior known as Furiosa, and they would go on to protect a group of young women who were under the attack from vicious warlord the Immortal Joe. Both films at some stage have been deemed as amongst the best action movies of all time, but which one is overall the best Mad Max installment in general? Well, we'll then talk about the first element in terms of story, and here I'll give the nod to Road Warrior. Yes, it's nothing too convoluted, it's the basic premise of the main hero saving innocents from a more powerful, threatening group. It's that familiar, compelling story that we see all the time from those classic samurai and western movies, but the film also has that undercurrent theme of living a sheltered life and being protected, or taking the decision to venture out into the wild world to find a better life or a better tomorrow. Set by the epic prologue sequence at the beginning of the film, the movie really creates that sense of desolation and despair, which adds weight to the overall story. Now Fury Road, to be honest, has much more of a bare bones narrative where essentially it's a chase movie. We see the characters spend 2/3 of the film driving one way and then the last third driving back to where they came from. And it really fails to utilise at all in terms of Max's backstory. All we get are these very quick flashback edits that don't really add anything. In terms of the story, we have a quick pit stop to talk briefly about the Greenlands that we see have been destroyed, and then we get back to the overall chasing. And after a while, what starts off as very intense and awe-inspiring and exciting ends up being very mundane and also routine. So we definitely give the nod here in terms of story overall to The Road Warrior. We then talk about action and what's the closely contested element between the two, and in this regard it really depends on the quality or the overall quantity. Now if we're talking about the quality, then I think here we have to give the mark to Road Warrior. Set in a pre-CGI era of course, so everything we see is real, practical, so you really get that raw fist reality in terms of the action, where you really feel all of the grit and the smoke and the intensity, and there's a real savagery about the violence, again adding to that overall atmosphere and tension. And of course we have to talk about the climactic tanker chase, still one of the greatest action sequences ever put to cinema. From all of the wide spanning shots, the musical score and the crashing of vehicles, it's just epic movie making, and nothing in Fury Road, or indeed most action movies, holds up in comparison. Now having said all that, if you want wall-to-wall spectacle, then Fury Road most definitely delivers. As mentioned, the first 2/3 is literally a non-stop chase, and yes, at times there is that same intensity and escapism. Obviously having a much larger budget allows for much more prolonged spectacle, and just like Road Warrior, we do get that climactic chase. I think the difference here is that there is very little in between the action sequences, so the sequences themselves are not that distinctive. And of course, being a much more modern movie, everything is accelerated in terms of the quick edits and the close-ups, but it's far less suspense and tension as a result. So whilst my own personal preference may lead to Road Warrior in this regard, you could easily call this segment in terms of the action a tie, and you won't get too many arguments from me in that regard. We then talk about cinematography, and I think Fury Road will get the edge here. Once more, Road Warrior, having all been shot on location, has that raw, natural look to it, exactly what a realistic post-apocalyptic barren wasteland would look like. And again, the movie does well with its wide and overhead shots, really letting the viewers see all of the action and the landscape that happens within the environments, and it looks absolutely glorious. but at the same time you can't deny the visual aesthetic of Fury Road. It's a real dazzling mix of colour and energy in what's much more of a hyper-stylized reality, but it's still great to look at. We have all of those various HD filters, and it does create some stunning shots. Whether it's the sandstorm sequence at the beginning of the film, or the nighttime assault, the crazy guitar playing gang members, it most definitely captures the imagination and comic strip fantasy of a post-apocalyptic future, and it is indeed great to see. We then go on to the element of characterization, and Road Warrior wins easily here. And this is because when we talk about Fury Road, and despite the fact that it is titled Mad Max, the fact is that the lead character is very much sidelined in his own movie. It is indeed Charlize Theron Furiosa who dominates most of the screen time, and yes, it has a good effect on the film, which is due more to the actress's screen presence, but again the fact that this is a Mad Max movie, and there's no attempt to get deep into Max's character. As I mentioned before, the lack of anything to do with those flashbacks. And if you in fact watch Fury Road at times in terms of the overall plot and narrative, you do ask the question as to whether Max is actually essential to the story at all. And that in itself is a failure to the character himself. And it's not really a fair use of a great actor in Tom Hardy, who can only do the best with the limited screen time that he has. So we then move on to the box office, and of course Fury Road will win here, being a sizable box office hit, grossing over $380.4 million from a $154 budget. It incredibly was nominated for around 10 Oscar awards, managing to win 6. They were all technical ones for the likes of production design, sound mixing, editing and costume design. Now Road Warrior was and always has been a cult box office success. Back then grossing around $36 million, which is still impressive given its budget of only $4.5 million. The title Road Warrior itself came from Warner Brothers wanting to signal it as a much more standalone release, fearing that the first Mad Max movie wasn't known too well within its US territories. So we then move on to impact and legacy, and the clear winner here is Road Warrior. Now yes, Fury Road was very successful upon its release, with many critics, as I mentioned before, citing it as one of the greatest action movies of all time, something that I don't agree with, but still it did have a short-term impact and success. But when we look back at Road Warrior, which really overall set the standard for action filmmaking after its release, and also defines the post-apocalyptic movie and story adventure. Despite the success of the first film, Road Warrior was really the first stepping stone to Mel Gibson's rise to becoming a huge superstar actor throughout the 80s and 1990s. And one of the movie's most biggest legacies, without question, was being the inspiration for the classic manga and anime series Fist of the North Star. Originally created in 1983 by Buruson and Tetsuo Hara, the post-apocalyptic story has all of the Road Warrior elements in terms of the character design and the aesthetic, and it itself went on to become one of the greatest anime and manga series of all time, and a lot of that lends credence to Mad Max 2. And in summary then, I ultimately here feel that The Road Warrior is the vastly superior film to Fury Road. Again, if you can get past the overall visuals and kinetics, Road Warrior has much more of the stronger story and a much more lasting impact in terms of its action and influence, and that's why I deem it still to be an absolute masterpiece and the best overall installment within a Mad Max franchise. So there's my overall thoughts and feelings when comparing both Mad Max The Road Warrior and Mad Max The Fury Road. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you have any other movies, television series or issues within the pop entertainment and culture scene that you'd like to see me cover, then also let me know within the comments, and I will see if I can provide further commentary for you on that subject matter within the future. Please also hit like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon.